The
Um,
Polish names?
oh, from the oldest to the youngest.
Yeah.
Well, Czesław was the oldest. Charles, he was the oldest son, and we knew him and knew of him. He was married. We didn't see him all that often. And they were rich and had a beautiful home, and most people were not invited. He was he was married to Teresa, who was a real mean lady who wanted my grandmother to die so she could get her earrings.
And so their last name was still Roman then?
Oh yeah, he was Charles Roman.
So there's
Czesław
cousins
Charles.
out there with that last name probably.
I don't think they had no children. They were too rich to have children. They didn't want to share it with anybody. I think my grandmother went to live with them for a while when this all broke up.
So that was the
Czesław,
oldest, and then what was the
and
next one?
Marianna, who was the one who died, the oldest sister. Is this somebody's keys up here?
Yeah, I know. I see that.
Marianna, they call Maine, which is a terrible name for anybody. Maine. Marianne, she's buried in the churchyard there. She died quite young. Next after her among the living was Sarah, I guess, Sabina. And she lived to be the oldest. She lived into her 90s. She was mean. Still mean in her 90s. Not very smart. Mimi was the smartest one. Then came either Henry or Mimi. Henry would be Henrik, and he was, I think, either a year older or a year younger. I'm not sure. And then Mimi, who was Jadwiga, and then the baby who was Joseph, married to Aunt Jeannie, and they had their two little kids that lived down the street from us. But the house, when Uncle Henny threw him out, he came to live with us, and we were already living in like half a house. That's the way they did in those days. You know, if you couldn't afford a whole house, you lived in the front or the back of the house. That went on in Europe too, as far as I know, because when I read books in England, they lived in the front or back of a house, and the doctor or somebody would have to go around the back through the alley.
So how many sisters and brothers did Mimi's mom have? What is your mom's name? Your Mimi's mom's name?
My grandmother's name?
Yeah.
Joseffa or Josephina, I don't know.
And what was her maiden name?
Wasika. Wasik.
And did they have, she had siblings?
Oh my, yes. I'm not even sure how many, but she had those that we knew of in our neighbor. Marta was the one who had diabetes, and there was no insulin or anything at that time, so she just starved herself. And she had a nice figure, and of course she couldn't eat anything. And she had a very nice house. They had a piano, and they only had 2 children. In those days, that was most unusual to have. If you had children, you had a lot of children. And they were fairly wealthy. And her husband was Ludwig, and they were Smolenskis. She lived up the street, a couple streets up from us, in a little bit nicer house, a little nicer neighborhood. Then there was the oldest one, and her name was Scholastica, and she was Lewandowska. And they had one daughter, again, only one child, one daughter named Jeannie. And in fact, she was Janina, so that would be the same as your name. That was Mimi's cousin, Janina. And then there was a brother, I can't remember his name now, who would have been Wasiki. And they lived up the street from us. One of their children was Frida. It was a cousin that I saw from time to time. We weren't close to, where we saw these people all day, every day, or every week, or once a year, or anything. Sort of lived in the same neighborhood. Oh, there was a sister-in-law that lived 2 doors down from my grandmother's house, and the kids were not allowed to go there because she was too liberal. She let the kids do anything they want. She made rag rugs, so my mother, when she was a little kid, would run over there to her house, and they take rags, any old rags they had, and strip them, and then braid them. So there was lint and rags and everything all over the place, and that would drive my grandmother crazy because she was like never anything, not a speck of anything out of place. So and the kids could climb all over all the furniture and throw rags around and just have a good old time, And my mother loved to go there, and my grandmother would not let them go there. I can't remember her name, but she was a sister-in-law, and she was definitely frowned upon. And a lot of people in those days would look down upon somebody who was a little less than them in some way, either in their perception.
So she was a Wasika. Wasika.
Yeah, because she was married to a brother of my grandmother, yeah.
So your grandfather had two brothers.
He had it, yes, as far as we know, and I think that was so. There was never anything to say otherwise. He had Matriarch and Stanley. And Stanley was in Trenton, right across the river from us, but we almost never saw them. From time to time, we would go visit Trenton cousins.
Who'd you go with?
Whoever had a car, almost nobody had a car. Maybe Uncle Jack would take us. Only once or twice, I think, in all the years do I remember going to Trenton to visit.
That was Stanley? In Trenton?
That was his brother. I don't remember him at all. I'm not sure he was even there. His family was there.
And what about Matriarch? Where did he go?
Matriarch's to Chicago. He went to Chicago, and as far as I know, he had the one daughter. I don't know if he had more than one. That was Mary, and Mary was married to she's a cousin of Mimi, married to a naval officer and was stationed here in Hawaii when the 1941 raid, when that happened, Pearl Harbor thing.
Hmm.
And then she survived him. I don't know if there was a divorce or he died. And she used to send boxes of clothes, and that's where I got all my fancy, really nice things, including my fur
Was she
coat.
close to Mimi?
I don't know if they knew each other. I'm not sure they ever met. Chicago, you didn't go to Chicago in those days, or you didn't go.
Then why would she send stuff to you?
They were cousins. She didn't have any children or daughters, and they must have maybe written to each other by mail, just like the one in Warsaw.
There was a cousin in Warsaw?
There was a cousin in